should I keep going? That's kind of the point of the exercise I'm doing this week. A couple days ago, I did a live stream. I will pin it in a comment down in the comment section below at the end of this live stream, if anybody wants to go see it. In that video, I listed out 12 things that I give as advice or things that I teach, concepts on how to reach financial freedom, which is the purpose of my content. My goal is to teach the average individual that you can reach financial freedom, make work completely optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. This is my 99th live that I do every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And I answer questions. As long as the questions come in, I tend to let this live stream go. Usually lasts around 2 hours. I do short form content, shorter form content on Thursdays and the weekends, a 10 to 20 minute video, because not everybody's going to click on this 2-hour video. As a matter of fact, in Futureland, this beginning section of this will be chopped out and made into its own video. So in my live stream the other day, I asked which piece of advice or concept that I teach has had the biggest impact on you. Because, and I'm going to share it in this video, remind me in the comments, because I meant to do this last week and I forgot because my memory is perfect. And I want to share how much I make on YouTube. Now, the live streams are every Tuesday, usually 1.5 to 2 hours long. The time it takes to make a 10 to 20 minute video, if it's edited, is 3 to 4 hours. If I do a live stream that's 10 to 20 minutes, it takes 10 to 20 minutes, but I research the topic. I don't script, but I put an outline in. I put an hour or so in before I do a live stream where I just kind of talk about a subject. And something I've suggested to my friend Millennial Mike, who might be joining me later, is that when there's a topic that you're not sure you want to cover, like you're not sure what people's reaction is going to be, to do it live. Because if you have time to do it and then edit it, and it was offensive, that means you had plenty of points in time to think about it. But if you do a live stream, and it's really just me speaking from the heart, this is a subject that I think this on when it comes to investing. People get the truth without the time to reconsider during editing. So we're looking at me spending more time every week on YouTube than I do every month on my real estate portfolio. Takes me on average less than 2 hours a month to self-manage my 16 rentals, which now produce over $18,000 a month in pure cash flow profit for me to spend, travel. Like I live in Washington State. My portfolio is in Washington State, currently in San Antonio, trying to figure out how to spend money and do all the things here. Headed home tomorrow. I know that owning my rentals is worth the time because it sets me free. It gives me the time freedom. I never have to work a W-2 again. I never have to sell my life 1 hour at a time because money isn't a concern. I think it was LeBron who said, when you don't have enough, money is the only thing. Once you have enough, it's just a thing. My rentals make money, just a thing. But my time is what matters to me, that time freedom. So I put in less than 2 hours a month to generate over $200,000 a year in profit with my rental portfolio. I'm doing 2 to 4 hours a week, longer if I do edited videos, to make, I'll show you, on average, $100 a month on YouTube. So I'm definitely not doing YouTube for the monetary compensation. At some point, a channel can blow up and you can make a lot of money. At that point, I'm going to count on you and your comments to keep me focused on how real estate gave me financial freedom and not anything generated by YouTube. Because the point of making this content is to help people like you do what I did and reach financial freedom. And it's not, here's exactly how I did it, this is how you need to do it. The first thing is to show you that it's possible. Then talk about many different paths, starting and growing a business, investing in stocks or crypto, or investing in real estate, and then hundreds of different ways to invest in real estate. One of those systems will work for you. to make work optional, to give you time freedom. Doesn't mean that you retire early. It means you can. Not everybody is as lazy as me and can retire early and literally do just whatever you want. Some people need to have the focus and identity that comes from having a W-2. I understand. People like Matt are broken. They exist. So I asked the question of my content, which was having the biggest impact. And kind of this was a trick question. I wanted to know, I've covered several topics. In that list of 12, there were 2 that were the ones that seemed to offend the most people. So in that video, I listed them last. The first was, if I had money in a retirement account, I'd still have to work. If you want to retire early, that's the caveat. If you just want to retire at normal, and this is not how I look at it, but retirement age, a retirement account, if you do another one, no other investing, sure, makes sense. But if you want to retire early, they're actually a pretty bad vessel to put your money in. The second one was my LLC rant. I saved those to the end because those are concepts that I teach where I see the question often of, I want to get started in real estate. How do I set up my LLC, which is basically a new investor putting a whole bunch of barriers in between them and their first property, and they don't even own one yet, when there's already enough to learn. I talked about, is it my concept that it's possible? Is that the most impactful? Is it my binder strategy, how I get my tenants to ask me to raise the rent, which actually makes it fairly, not easy, but easier than it could be to find cash flowing deals right on the MLS. Like all of my properties are from the MLS with conventional loans, no secret sauce. Is it that there's no secret sauce? Is that what I've taught? Is it teaching you the math of time? The way that I have used an explanation to my tenants that has made it in over a decade to where I've never had one late or missing rent payment. Or that I can't teach you how to live longer, but I can teach you how to live more by multiplying the amount of time every day that's yours if you don't have to work. Which of the concepts had the biggest impact? And I went through all 12 in that video. That's actually not what I was looking for. I kind of want to know which one was the most impactful. I think there are some, like I'm going to make a video later this week or next week on how I lost a decade, but because of one sentence that my brother said. Now, I made this video about a year ago, and normally when somebody asks me, hey, I've never heard of that concept before, I'll link the video to them, and I couldn't find it. So out of hundreds of videos, if I can't find the video, it might not be easy for other people to find. So I'm going to remake that video explaining how I lost a decade because of a sentence my brother said. And really the solution was, when we buy a property, we're not spending money, we're moving it. We take it from the bank and we put it in the property. It's still there. It's still ours. We can sell, we can cash out, refinance, we can take out a home equity line of credit, right? That money is still ours. It's just in the property instead of the bank, working harder for us than it does in the bank. I don't know that financial freedom would happen if I didn't share all of the concepts. And I listed 12. I'm thinking there are dozens, I don't know if 100, but more than 100, I think, concepts that I've tried to teach to help people reach financial freedom. Some of the things probably don't matter. House hacking, if it's not something that you're capable of or doesn't fit your ability, you can still reach financial freedom without it. If you don't want to invest in real estate at all, you can still reach financial freedom. Those other ways that I listed. So I don't think you need to learn every aspect that I'm teaching, but what I was actually looking for, instead of thinking what was the most important thing I've taught, because each thing's going to resonate with different people at different points in their investing journey, really what I was looking for is, am I wasting my time? Is the 4+ hours a week that is definitely not compensated monetarily by YouTube worth doing? So what I was looking for is exactly what I got. The answers from people who watched the video, and this is just, I'm going to go through in no particular order because I didn't write this down. I've just opened a website that has these answers. From Alan: there are so many, Dion, but I think your story is what inspires me the most to get started, even though I know next to nothing about real estate. The way you emphasize how it's possible, while being a lazy person, which is true, to retire well, no matter your starting point, really hits home. Also, your honesty and integrity really shines through. God bless you and the family. Thank you. I appreciate that. This is what I'm looking for, is comments of, here's the one I liked. This had an impact, right? You guys were super smart. You can answer my question. But most of you followed it up with, this is from Matthew. I have learned a lot of concepts from Dion's pragmatic approach. I really like his style of having enough and not running himself ragged just to build a bigger and bigger empire. I am happy he is enjoying his retirement and grateful he is willing and still share his wisdom with us mere working mortals. That's what I'm looking for, is the information that I'm sharing. Not as much which one was the most impactful, but is it impactful as a whole? Rob, to this day, the most important video I got was from you and Zuber and Lumberjack, is where you listed out how much total cash you had to invest over time to reach financial freedom. It showed just how much more important time was rather than the amount invested. Thanks, Rob. So a lot of people, when they talk about investing, they'll talk about you need millions saved up because they're just going to spend their money in retirement, or you need the 4% rule, 25 times your expenses saved in. That's significant. If it takes you $40,000 a year to live, you need $1 million saved up. If it takes you $100,000 a year to live, you're talking $2.5 million. Over a decade, out of my own W-2 income, I invested $320,000 to generate over $200,000 in cash flow. Pure cash flow. Did a video recently on the truth about cash flow that breaks down exactly how much profit there is every month. After taxes, after expenses, after repairs that are going to happen in the future, all of those things. I think that's one of the things that's important too, is to teach. This came up from a couple of answers too. It doesn't take hundreds of units. Right? With 16, I was able to retire from a job I actually liked because time freedom was more important. But it didn't take millions of dollars invested or decades of investing. From Angel, you've taught me a ton. Seriously, it's all right here in the comments. Just hoping you stay healthy and get a bunch of free time to enjoy. Working on it. I'm always pumped for your next video or live. Thank you. If I had to pick the biggest thing I've learned from you, it's to keep it simple and focus on cash flow. Because let's face it, the 70s are going to be rough either way. Exactly. So the cash flow thing is really important. Me and Millennial Mike did a live stream the other day when we were substitute teachers filling in for Matt, the lumberjack landlord, while he was going into the one rental at a time boot camp. BiggerPockets, who I like, right? I reached financial freedom partially because of the things I watched and learned from BiggerPockets, mostly the guests coming on and sharing their story. And early, Brandon Turner talking about 24 rental units in Aberdeen, Washington, helping him reach financial freedom. David Green working in law enforcement, receiving enough financial freedom from his rentals to get out of law enforcement. BiggerPockets recently has made a lot of videos talking about how cash flow doesn't matter. It's hard to get now, so you shouldn't be investing for it. Brandon Turner was recently on Ryan Pineda's channel talking about things, and Ryan Pineda said, actually, don't worry about cash flow. What you need to do is develop a skill so you can go get a job that makes $250,000 a year, or a skill that makes $250,000 a year. So there's people that I've been watching for years talking about how cash flow doesn't matter. When I don't want a skill that makes money because that takes my time. I don't want equity. I've never sold a property, never taken out a HELOC, never refinanced to pull money out. I've never sold to 1031. I've never done anything with equity other than look at it because it's pretty. But cash flow set me free. The comment earlier of how you taught me it's okay to have enough. That's something that people with the hustle nation culture don't have. There is no enough. It's get up early, work really. I went to one rental at a time's in-person meetup a little over a year ago, and there was a speaker after lunch, and he was very motivational. That's why Zuber was really smart to put him after lunch, because it kind of wakes everybody up. It was very motivational, and he had a start of his pitch was it's when you talk to yourself, affirmations in the morning. These are the things I do in the morning for 30 minutes to get ready for my day. And I was sitting in my chair and I texted Millennial Mike, for 30 minutes in the morning, I wake up. Like, that's my morning routine. I'm not a part of Hustle Nation. I'll probably never be invited on Ryan Pineda's channel because he's looking for the people that are hard charging go-getters, and I'm the lazy investor. Yes, I climbed the corporate ladder. Yes, I worked a bunch of overtime. Yes, I worked a side hustle playing World of Warcraft to sell things online, to make money, to invest, to put money to work. I had 5 years of as much work as I could do, as much improvement to my income as I could possibly make, so that the next 5 years I had to figure out what to do with all the money that was coming in. And now for the next whatever years are left, I never have to hustle again. From JOD. You are my inspiration to overcome the obstacles in my life. Sometimes I think it's impossible to handle what life is throwing at me, but I'm thinking what you went through, and I keep going because I know it's just temporary. If you did it, I can do it too. That's what I learned from Dion. Always appreciate your help. I say this whenever I have a guest and hope they're not offended, because I could say it about myself and I know I'm not offended because this is very factual. When I'm talking the average individual can reach financial freedom in 10 years or less and make work completely optional, I'm saying that because I'm about as average as you can get. And I did it. And I had a pretty bad starting position. So kind of, without being insulted, that's exactly what I'm hoping people think. If this goober can do it, Bilio, I would have to say one thing. It's possible to be financially independent from a few rentals. Love that. Hopefully my Wi-Fi doesn't completely fail. Before your channel, I had the mindset that it would take 40 to 50 rentals and the headaches of that many rentals. But now I can see myself free from the system with a small number. I would say the number 2 thing that I learned, which I don't find from other YouTube, is living more. Only 24 hours in a day. Get time freedom and live more life. Thank you so much for, and then you ran out of words. Thank you for that. So exactly, it doesn't take a lot of rentals. I mean, 16 is a lot when you have 0 when you're starting it, and it's not 16 rentals. When I retired, I had 7 properties, so 7 real estate transactions, mostly small multifamily, so duplexes, triplex, and a fourplex, 1 single family house, to get 16 rentals. I've since retiring bought a duplex, and now I have 18. So I have 8 properties, 18 units currently. Doesn't take dozens or hundreds. You can have that goal. You can be the next lumberjack landlord. You can have over 100 units. You can have exponentially more financial freedom monetarily than I do. Time freedom. It's time freedom. You could have it with less units. From Matt, all 12 help to demystify. I learned a new word today. I was this year many years old. Demystify real estate investing. Seems like a cop-out saying that, but all of them help me to make the process less scary and create a more well-rounded view on wealth. You are very relatable, and that helps people to see themselves having your success in the future if they can just stick to a plan and avoid dumb decisions. Also, the way you explained calculating cash on cash return was a huge help for me personally. Awesome. So this is why I would love to read all of the comments. You guys can find the live. It was not too long ago. Please check out that live stream. Look at the 12. Leave a comment. I still answer all of the comments on the older videos. Of the 12, which one had the most impact? But am I actually having an impact is what I was looking for. So I thank each and every one of you for leaving comments and letting me know that while I'm spending more time every week on YouTube than I am every month, it's worth it. Because it's not about the money. And I think Beth Traverso is going to be joining here any second. So before I do that, I want to actually share what I make on YouTube, because I said I would do that last week. So let me share my screen to let you know this is how much you can make on YouTube if you have just under 15,000 subscribers. And I have to think, here we go. Is it analytics? That should have it. So this is what I made in the last 28 days, $523. Or $18,000 a month in 2 hours. So I'm definitely not doing YouTube for the money. I hope everybody is having an awesome Tuesday. Let me get to the comments. And the opening intro is a chance for people to get questions into the comments so that for the next hour or two, as long as the questions last, we can go through. And to me, I really like the live streams. Maybe that's something you can let me know. I've asked this once before, so maybe there's other people here today that can answer me. What do you like better? A 15-minute scripted video that's edited or a 15-minute live stream? So I know which ones of those to make in the future. Howdy, Michelle. I see you beat Dave here. He's not here yet. And I think Jason is right. Howdy. Somebody here it was somebody, maybe its comments gone, that Dave is becoming a legend. I saw that earlier. Michelle, Dion, to answer your question, you are responsible for me buying a duplex last year, and just about everything you listed has made a great impact. Thank you. So, I mean, I don't know that everything I teach matters, but I think having a well-rounded view of all of the things that I teach helps. Because, and that was what I was going to say about these live streams, when the questions come up, you get to find out what an investor keeps in the top of their mind. So I don't have to do research, because when we look at a deal or when we're making a financial decision, the more of this that is kept top of mind awareness, the quicker you can make that decision. And I see Mike is joining us. Howdy.
How you doing?
You made it.
I just heard you flexing.
So I have a question for you then, since you're here.
Did you hear that?
I could totally retire and never work again. Yes. Okay, here's a question for you. You have watched some of my content. You have been in most of my live streams. We've met several times. We've recorded videos together. You drove to my entire portfolio one day. We went to that's how small a portfolio can be that can reach financial freedom, is we drove to the entire thing in one day. Yep. And recorded at each place. Of the things that I teach, what's been the most impactful to you?
Well, you put me on the spot like that, and I feel like I could probably come up with a more profound answer if I had a few more minutes to think about it. What were the comments that I left last time, dang it? I cited some of your Dionisms. Maybe, I guess, from a perceptual...
You left some during the live stream.
Yeah, I did. And I was trying to remember what they were off the top of my head. But I know that you definitely have an outside of the box way of looking at everything. Actually, I want my leases to end in January. You know, like that type of stuff, that type of Dion stuff you pull. So, but yeah, here, give me a minute to think about what the most impactful thing is that you've taught me. I'll respond to that in like 3 minutes.
Fair enough. Take your time. I did that earlier with the one rental at a time, the Three Amigos video. Mike asked a question. I gave a knee-jerk answer, and then we went round robin, and then later, 7 minutes later, I gave an actual thought-out answer. Michelle, I think the most impactful was the binder method. Nice. There was a couple of people who said that. I like that. I kind of thought there'd be more that said that, because there are several investors who have sent me responses of, I'm getting $300 or $400 more a month from my tenants than I thought I could get. But I think there was 3 or 4 people who said the binder. I think the most common answer was that I taught them it's possible. Wealth Building Journey, howdy. And then Bill O'Connell already took back a message to make me lose sleep forever and ever. And there's Bill. Dave has become a legend. Frank, howdy. Tiffany, howdy. My shirt. You had me at howdy. Wayne, howdy, you made it. Buzz Tune, Tony, let me see. Frank, hey Dion, you just summed it all up. We get the truth. Nice. Laura, howdy, good to see you. Invest to Wealth, Jada, Richard. I see Josh put in a super chat. I appreciate that. Let me make sure, Josh, I'm not missing a question. I appreciate the support. Michael, make sure that I don't miss one too.
Yep, I'm looking.
Wombat Striker. I was just getting to the point from other sources where I was beginning to question retirement accounts when I heard you say it also. That's probably the one for me. Nice. Good. And Wombat Striker, I think that's had a big impact. I think retirement accounts make sense for some people. Laura, good evening. Everyone, Dion, the most impact you gave me is not on the list. You took the time to meet me in Florida. I am surrounded by people who think REI is crazy. I was constantly told, and then I went to, I was going to lose my working money. You gave me the confidence to move forward. It was your affirmation that helped me to keep me going. I like simplicity. Do not overcomplicate things. Thank you. That was really nice. I remember meeting you in Florida. Laura had a one rental at a time book with paper clips and post-it notes and highlighted sections. I mean, I sat with Laura and I knew you were going to do this. You were going to do good. Howdy, Beth.
Hey there. I'm working through some technical difficulties. Sorry about that.
No worries. I was too. This is my third room where I'm trying to make sure Wi-Fi works where I'm at.
This is my third computer, and I think I finally got it working. So yeah, good thing I have backups of everything just because there's always something not working. So glad to join you. Thank you.
That's the way it is in law enforcement too. What do you do when your flashlight dies? You use your backup. What do you do when that one doesn't work? Well, you use your backup.
Yeah. I always have at least two desktops, two laptops, and two printers at any given time. And hopefully one of them will work. So that's the goal.
I usually do as far as gaming computers go too.
Yeah, right.
Different reasons, I guess.
Cool.
So Beth, I don't know if you heard the intro today, but what I've been talking about is of the information that I share. Is there anything that I teach as a concept that's had the biggest impact on people? So what do you think is your guess of anything of the things you know that I cover that's had an impact?
Yeah, and I watched your video from a couple days ago, and there's a lot of things. I would say, well, I mean, I already was doing real estate investing before I knew you, but I think that's the thing I take from you the most is just showing people that regular people can do this. Like, I don't think any of us here have superpowers necessarily. We're just really good at certain things and skills that anyone can learn. So none of us came from a privileged family or anything like that, as far as like wealthy family with tons of connections, and nobody was giving us money or anything like that. But it's one of the things I love about real estate investing is literally anybody who puts the work and time in can do it too. So, and it's a very diverse group of people, but it seems like a lot of them are people that are very much bootstrappers, people who just find ways to make it work for themselves, and they're solution oriented rather than problem oriented. And I think that you connect with that, and I think that you inspire a lot of people for that. And so I really appreciate that about you. You're a very good teacher, and that's a very good quality. You're able to break things down in ways that make sense to people that I think is very relatable. And one of the things that of your 12 things, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing that he said was, so there was a lot to unpack, but one of the things was that you validate my lack of LLCs. So thank you for that. Because I used to have an LLC for every property and it was a nightmare. So I ended up scrapping all that and kind of going back. And I got a lot of flack from that. And I still, I do have attorneys and CPA. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, well, I have tons of insurance and I do things the right, I do the things that you recommend, but it's kind of nice to know, like, see, there's other people out there that don't have LLCs for every property and they manage to protect themselves. And so there's you, and I think Thatch Wynn too. He talked about a big player. He's he keeps a lot of stuff in his personal name too. So I had to go back and forth so many times with quit claiming the deed to the LLC and then back to me and then back to the LLC because I was refinancing and the bank didn't want it in the LLC name. And then there was all these different bank accounts and all the different bookkeeping stuff. And anyway, yeah. So thanks for validating all of that, you know. Maybe at some point I may still put a couple in there, but you know, probably not. So yeah, so we'll start with those couple of things. But I say the main thing is just I think that you're helpful for the everyday person to realize that you don't have to be. I remember when I was younger, even when I first started selling real estate, I remember one of my business partners was like, you should buy a rental house. Thankfully, I had some good mentors and connections at that time. And I was like, what? That's for rich people. I'm not rich people. Why would I be able to do that? You know, I thought only rich people could buy houses to rent. There wasn't YouTube, I don't think was even around back then. So it's just one of those things that
Yeah.
you have to have somebody to show you the way. Now, thankfully, there's more resources for people to show you the way. And I love that. And you do a great job of that for people.
One of the things I'm really impressed with you and the Lumberjack Landlord and Zuber is getting into rentals really before YouTube University, before you could think of a question and go watch a video on it. You had to maybe find a book, but how many books can you go through till you find one that actually covers the topic the right way, where you could skip through videos. You can find a content creator that has it. It's not less impressive now to get into real estate and reach financial freedom, but it's something I take note of is when somebody's been doing it a while. I knew that you survived 2008. Yeah. Zuber survived 2008. So it's why I watch a lot of their content is how I figured out, well, I don't want all of my tenants the way Lumberjack had. He had almost all of his tenants were in construction because 2006, 2007, construction was booming. And then all of a sudden, almost all of his tenants stopped paying because that industry took a hit. So I diversified my thing. So I learned from those guys too. Yeah. And with the LLC thing, I think you did it. I think you said it kind of the way I like to think of it. When you're growing your portfolio, it's not the time to worry about it. You put so many barriers, hard to refinance, hard to keep track of stuff. Once you have a portfolio and you have, a significant amount of wealth, significant cash flow, and you just want to sleep better at night, having some LLCs, and it isn't going to slow down your journey, isn't going to stop you from financial freedom, I don't have a problem with that at all. Like that totally makes sense. It's that person that doesn't even own a property yet that puts all the barriers in front of them.
Yeah, and that's a symptom of something else. That's a symptom of somebody throwing up roadblocks just because it's scary to take meaningful action, I think. So sometimes people find ways to make things harder just so they don't have to do the scary thing, which is buy the property. And then you realize it's not that scary after you do it a couple times.
No, I've said this many times. Almost everything in real estate is terrifying the first time.
Yeah. And then you become more and more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And people say that a lot, but it really is true. You have to learn to become comfortable being uncomfortable. As a real estate investor, for me as a real estate agent too, like there's a whole lot of things you have to do that are kind of scary and might feel risky. But the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with that and you realize it's just another day. And the bad thing almost never happens. And a lot of good things do happen.
One of the reasons I did so well my job in the last 10 years is because I was okay being uncomfortable. Once I was getting close to having the first duplex and I saw the path to financial freedom, I used to have this, I'm a single parent with 3 kids. I can't lose my job. I can't take risks at work. But once I saw the path to financial freedom, I started doing things at work that were risky, that were uncomfortable, that could have cost me the job, but worked out. And so I think sometimes we keep our head down because we don't want to mess up at work. But once you have financial freedom, an example is Mike here. Mike was on, came after Vine. It's out and still TikTok. Did really well, hundreds of thousands of subscribers. People just followed him because he made cop jokes, but didn't have rentals yet or didn't have a lot. And his management came to him and said, hey, you can't do this in uniform. We don't want you to do this. Ironically, came back to him later and said, we're trying to figure out this TikTok thing to recruit people. Can you do it for us?
Oh yeah.
Smartly, you said no.
Yeah. Trailblazer.
But exactly. We got Wombat Striker here. I'm mostly stocks and REITs, so I might get a bit less from some of the other points. Exactly. It wasn't that everything would matter. That I'm even planning on adding a limited portion of rentals also eventually is pretty powerful too, though. I think so. Alantino, Godspeed. Howdy. I'm not exaggerating when I say that your trustworthiness shines. Almost everyone is a charlatan online. I think transparency means everything. And a moment of oversharing here. I think one of the reasons why I make sure everything is transparent is because of my memory issues. I never want to have to remember what I said if it wasn't exactly what I can literally go look at my thing and say, what was my cash flow at this point? How many rentals did it take? How bad was my marriage? Whatever that memory thing is that might not make it in the video, it has to be just clearly transparent. And then, Mike, you've been through the Business Insider gauntlet of looking at your finances to have that article written about you. I did the same thing on me. It's like a mortgage underwriter gets involved in your life.
It's more invasive than the mortgage underwriter.
It's good that they're vetting people for those stories, because people like to blow a lot of hot air online, and so you want to know who's the real deal.
Right. Agreed.
Totally agree. Financial firefighter. Aloha, Mark. Who was I talking to about Hawaii recently? Something about Hawaii I was going to bring up too. Jada, Dion, if I go the single family route, would it be best to rent out the rooms like a multifamily so I can save up to invest on the next property faster? So when someone asks a question and it's something I haven't done as a primary thing, like if somebody said, hey, how do I invest out of state? I say, here's Millennial Mike. If they say, how do I do mostly seller financing? Here's Cody and Christian. If somebody says, how would I structure a rent by the room scenario? I would say to look up Todd Baldwin, like Alec Baldwin, but Todd Baldwin here on YouTube. That's his strategy around Seattle. He's also been in Business Insider, so I know he's been vetted. He's a millennial millionaire. Something's been about him too, but his strategy is buy the room. If you're choosing between
episode on
buy the room.
Sorry, there's like a lag or something. Sorry about that. I'm not trying to interrupt you, Dion. This is your live stream. I was just going to say that Todd Baldwin did a really good
episode okay. Go ahead.
on BiggerPockets podcast. There was one where he broke it down really well on the BiggerPocket. If you just Google it, you're on, search it on YouTube. But he is the man for the rent by the room. Yep. He hasn't figured out where a lot of the pain points, he knows how to smooth those over. So he's really good at that.
Yeah, and he's really good on social media. If you reach out on Instagram or maybe even Facebook, he answers questions. So a good source. But so then the choice becomes, Jada, do you do that because it takes more work, right? So the real estate X factor, the more risk you're willing to take, the more possible income. The more work you're willing to do, the more possible income, not guaranteed, but possible. Rent by the room is one of the higher tiered amount of work that it takes because you're also going to be managing personalities in shared spaces, which is why I suggest Todd Baldwin, because he has those pain points, like Beth said, figured out. Will it be more and justified by the amount of time? Do you have the bandwidth? Are you working full time? Do you have more time to spend? What would property management charge for a buy the room? There is a reason why I went small multifamily, and almost all of my units are by the unit. I do have one where it's 3 roommates. They've all signed the exact same lease, so they're all responsible for the full amount. So it's not like I've rented by the room, but it's a version of that because it's the lazy way. It takes longer, wasn't as productive. You also have to know your city's rules, how many unrelated adults can live. Some cities have that regulation still in place from the 60s. You also have the choice of doing what Millennial Mike is doing, where he has a small multifamily and he's renting out the other unit short term instead of long term. So you can also increase your income that way. Again, though, little more hands-on, a little more work than just signing a lease and maybe talking to that tenant once or twice in the next 2 years.
Mhm.
All-nighter hider, still traveling in my truck, few nights left. I just did a road trip too. In a car that didn't have air conditioning.
What? They make those still?
I drove my nephew. He was moving to Texas. I drove a vehicle down here for him, and it didn't have AC. And he didn't tell me till the day I was leaving.
What?
Yeah, lots of fun. And then my chat moved. So, Beth, if you don't mind, I have a question.
Sure.
What is going on with your most recent real estate transaction?
So what's going on with my most recent one? That was one that I bought with seller financing about a year ago. I haven't bought any this year, but that's because we had a lot of stuff going on with my husband was in a major accident. And so that just put a screaming halt to everything. And he's doing great now. But we are still working on finishing up the third of 3 major rehabs. But that was not the most recent one that I bought. But the most recent one I bought was seller financing. It was just an opportunity that just came along. It was too good to pass up. It was like a no money down. All I did was pay the seller's closing costs, and we set up a payment structure, and boom, done. And then we just had to do a few things to fix the house, like the refrigerator went on the fritz and a couple other things. But it's actually my newest constructed house, 2006 built in Snoqualmie, Washington. And that one now is on autopilot. I had to put a new tenant in there. That was a bit of a pain, but then now we're good. We're on autopilot. So happy to say. And then we are working on a full gut rehab over in the Cle Elum area, a property that we 1031'd into a while ago, but we put it on ice because other stuff took priority. And now we're rehabbing that 100-year-old structure. And man, there's some rickety stuff over there in Cle Elum, let me tell you. Anyway, so we're right now we got the outside all weather tight, buttoned up, and we're working on getting the inside finished now. And then once that's done, I'm not doing any more big projects. I'll probably eat those words because I'll find a great deal and want to do it. But I really don't want to do any more major remodels for a while. I need to just recoup my sanity. We self-finance all this stuff, I just want to just replenish the coffers and just sit for a while, So, but that property we purchased, one of the reasons why we purchased it was because besides this 3,200 square foot Craftsman on there, it also had 4 other lots that came with it. And so I love to have the value add opportunity where we can develop those over time into I'm going to build to rent 4 other houses on that property. And I'm going to do them, I think, just kind of one by one, self-financed. And the cool thing about when you have land, I love the extra lot factor. The cool thing about that got me excited about it was you can use the value of the lot for your loan to value when you're getting construction financing. I've never done construction financing, but I've worked with clients that have done it, and I know basically how it works. And so the value of the lot typically is going to be at least 25% or should be of the finished value. So say it's going to be a, $600,000 house, the value of the lot's probably about 1/4 to 1/3 of that. So probably around 150 to 200,000 for the value of the lot. And so then you can finance the entire build as part of construction financing, which then converts into final or permanent financing when it's done. So it's a really cool property that almost feels like a campground, and it's got a nice meadow and some trees over there, and it's a mountain community. It's a vacation community, about a bedroom and vacation community about an hour and a half east of Seattle. And so I'm thinking about things like maybe we could set it up to be like a collection of Airbnbs, like all together, maybe where families can rent these different cabins in a same area. There might be some demand for that. We'll see. There's a lot of different ways we could go with it. We could sell one. We could Airbnb them. We could long-term rental them. There's any number of ways we can go with that. And the thing is, we bought it so well, So do I have a minute to talk about a little bit of backstory on this? I don't need to go, stop me if you don't want to hear the whole story. I'll try to keep it short. My
No, you're
husband
good.
my husband bought a house, seller financing, back in 2002 for $200,000 in Renton Highlands. You guys would probably know where that is. Anyway, and that one was subdividable. And so we did subdivide those two lots off, and that's what saved our behinds during the 2008, 9, 10 debacle, because we were able to sell those and live off of that when my real estate career went in the tank, and so did his construction career. And all of a sudden, our rental properties were all upside down. So all the things we thought we could do to get ourselves out of it, like all of them went away all at once. It was a beep show. I'm not allowed to say it on YouTube, are we? I don't know, anyway. But it was that kind of a show, with little kids and everything. It was terrible. Very stressful, but we got through that by selling off those lots. We had to fire sale them, but whatever, it got us through for a couple years. And then anyway, COVID-19 happened. The renter there decided they didn't want to pay rent anymore. And we let that go for a while, but then when it got to the point of ridiculousness, it's like, all right, I can't just allow this to keep continuing, because she had a job and everything. It's like she was just totally taking advantage of the situation. It wasn't like she even had a hardship, and there was supposedly she didn't qualify for this and that and the other. Okay, I talked to an attorney. They said the only way you can end a lease is to move in or sell it. So like, all right, I guess we're selling it. So I gave her notice that we were going to sell it, and we long story short, we got her out, and we 1031 exchanged that property into this property. And so we got the house over in Cleellum with the 4 lots, and we got so much money from that Renton Highlands house that sold for like $780,000 that we were able to, that was a lot of gain. And so I was able, the accountant said, you should buy another house. We bought another rental over there in Cleellum too, that we just have as a long-term rental. That cash flow is great. So we got this house, it was $410,000 for 5 lots, including a 3,200 square foot house. And that's a really good buy for that area. There were some reasons why that was a good buy, and that was one of the most creative deal structures I ever did, but I won't go into all that creative deal structuring right now, but because I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. But the point being, we took that problem property, figured out a workaround, turned it into something that has already we've had a huge amount of gain, because the house itself is probably going to be worth around conservatively $750 when it's done, and then each of those 4 other lots is worth about $200,000. That's pretty good. So and then if we build properties on each of those, build houses on each of those, and each of those properties will probably be worth $750, $800 or so. And then we've got 5 properties when it's done. That's a pretty good portfolio just in itself right there, from that one deal. So it just goes to show you that one property purchased, granted that was 20 years ago that property was purchased, but you can continue to reap the rewards of that on and on and on as time goes on. So anyway, one thing I would say I wish we had done different was, it would have been nice if we were more prepared to deal with that giant project when we bought it, but it just sat there on ice for a year and a half, 2 years, and now we're just finally doing it. So we'll get around to it eventually. So now
There's 2 things there.
Yeah.
2 things there I want to unpack. The first one is a little over a year ago, Lumberjack Landlord and Zuber were trying to convince me to do a cash out refinance on my one paid off property that I had at the time, because interest rates were low and I was able to have money to put to work. They talked to me. They tried to talk me into taking a cash out refinance, and I said no, because I wanted that paid off property. It's like a piggy bank. And when 2008 hit, real estate transactions died, construction died. So both of your sources of income went away. Your rentals went upside down on value. That property carried you. So I have a paid off property. What do you call it? Scorched earth. Things fall apart. That's there. That's one of the reasons why I didn't do that. And the second thing I want to touch on is, you're doing some rehabs now, and you say, when I get these done, I want to be done and not do any more. And I've got this other place where I'm going to build 4 houses on each lot. Like you tied, I don't want to do big rehabs right into, and then for the next years. These are the places we're going to be
Clearly,
doing.
I'm insane because
So
I
it
don't
didn't take you
learn.
very long.
Yeah.
So I'm in my first and last burr. Like, I don't plan on doing this ever. And I think when I say it, people go, "Oh yeah, he's that lazy. It'll be him." So while we're
Yeah, people
talking, I
believe
have
you
Mike
when you
looking
say
through the
it.
comments. So
Yeah.
it looks like Mike as a teenager. They do, because they know I'm lazy enough to not do anything. I believe Lumberjack Landlord, when he retires, he's going to be as lazy as I am. And most people say, "Oh, you can't do that." I think Matt will pull it off.
I've seen people
So
yeah,
Mike,
I've seen people do it. Yeah, I think he can do it. Be lazy.
I think so. Have you had a chance, Mike, to look through the comments tonight and find some questions for us?
So believe it or not, I mean, I'm going through the questions and most people are just commenting on what the topic of the video is. So we can go through that, the most impactful things that people were saying that you've done for them,
Okay.
or we can go with the only question that's popped up so far. It's up to you. What do you want?
We'll start with that one, and then we'll go through with some of the comments. The question. Let's start there.
Travel Mang says, "What is great cash flow?"
What is great cash flow? So I'll go first because it's a knee-jerk reaction without any planning, and then Beth, I'll give you some time to think, and then I'll let you, more experience than me, bigger portfolio. I'll let you describe, explain, define what you think great cash flow is. Recently, when I was on the Three Amigos video, we talked about Brandon Turner saying, "Don't worry about cash flow. Make more money from your job. Buy rentals that just basically break even, appreciation, pay down, tax benefits. That'll all make it worth it over time, because whatever shifted in the market." And I said, he's right. I agreed with Brandon Turner for Brandon Turner, because he developed a social media presence that can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. He has a syndication network that can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Why would he worry about cash flow? So when it comes to what is great cash flow, what defines it for me is, what is your goal? Are you looking to create a job and a business so you don't have to work a W-2, flipping, wholesaling, burr? Sure, you're making a job. Those are episodical. You stop working, the money stops coming in for wholesaling and flipping. I wanted cash flow that set me free. And the reason I chose the yield to know if it was good cash flow or not is because I wanted the most cash flow with the least amount invested. So that doesn't mean I just buy a property all cash because it'll have the most cash flow in that deal because there's no debt on it. I wanted leverage so that I got a good return on my cash flow, on my investment, but it took less money to achieve more cash flow because the yield was better. So for me, great cash flow is when you buy a property or acquire an asset. In this case, I'm talking about real estate, where I steal this from one rental at a time, giving Zuber all credit. Study your market for 60 to 90 days and learn what is an average deal. And for me, average means you take out of 100 properties, you take 80 that are all going to lose money and are terrible, crappy deals, and you ignore them. You look at the 20 that are left that could make some money, and you figure out what is the average return on those. If it's 3 to 4%, you shoot for 5 or 6. In my area, for a few years, I was able to find 7 or 8%, fairly consistent. Out of those 20, I would easily find 80 that would lose money. So I shot for 10. So for me, great cash flow is a yield in your market, in the asset class that you understand, that is better than the average return in that area. And I used to say, and I think Zuber said this too, this helps you get a great deal. And then in a nanosecond of genius, Matt, the lumberjack landlord, pointed out, really, that protects you from getting a bad deal. Beth, how do you define great cash flow?
Great cash flow. So in my area, when you're looking at the average deal, is going to be severely negative cash flow. And I'm not playing that game. So I love appreciation, but I always think every deal has to cash flow. The first deal I bought was a little bit negative only until I could correct it. And then it was been positive ever since. So however, with that filter in mind, knowing like that's the realm that I'm investing in, cash flow is there. I look for mostly the value add and the cash flow that can bring. But it's looking at average and knowing if average is terrible and you can get something that's like pretty good, to me, that is great cash flow. So I know for me, I would say maybe $1,000 or more for the unit would be good. But I have purchased some, like that when we were talking about the 2006 build in Snoqualmie that I bought, seller financing was 0 down. That one only cash flows maybe about $300 a month, but I literally put nothing into it, and it's increased in value $200,000 since I bought it. Would you call that a bad deal? No, or the one I bought I could sell it right now and just be like, oh, thanks for the 200 grand, or 1031 it into an apartment building somewhere else in the United States or whatever, it's just like, so it's case dependent. And I always look at what the value add potential is, what can I do with this property? Like the one in Cle Elum, I'm not planning on building any of those other houses yet, but the fact that I could, and then there's like, if it hits the fan, I could just sell one of those lots if I needed to, and somebody would buy it, and I could have some money, like what got me through the 8, 9, 10 years, So great cash flow was the question. I think if I'm getting 500 to 1,000 and and it's a good asset that will have potential to improve over time, that works for me. I don't know. It's going to vary as to what the yield is going to be. The yield really is the better calculation, but in my market where what I'm working with, I always have to look at the other factors too, because that's the only way it's going to work. But I'm not floating anything negative. So, and thankfully I haven't had to do that in a long time, but I know how to look for the hidden cash flow opportunities that maybe others don't see. Like I bought a piece of vacant land that is in the old town of Snoqualmie, which is a touristy town in Washington, commutable to Amazon in those areas. And it's in the floodway. You can't build on it unless you're going to build commercial. I rent it out to a landscaper for $1,300 a month. It's the taxes are like $200 a year. There's no structure. There's a fence. That's it. And I probably could get 2,000 for that piece of land if I wanted, but that's great. So it's just a matter of just like looking at, like, other people would be like, what am I going to do with this land you can't build on in the floodway? Why would I want this? So it's just, I think that's one example of like, that's one of my best cash flowing deals because I paid the least for it. And it's nothing but cash flow. So I just got paid today for that. So it's like, oh, thanks. Cool. So, and who knows, maybe someday I'll build an office. It's zoned. You could build an office building there if you wanted, I'm not building an office, but it could someday. So anyway,
so
it's one of those it depends type answers. I like your answer better.
So I have a question, Beth. With your current portfolio, let's say you didn't want to do real estate anymore and your husband didn't want to do construction anymore and you guys just stopped working. Would your portfolio pay for your life?
Yes.
Okay.
Good job.
So what I'm about to say, hopefully the lumberjack landlord is not watching and Zuber doesn't watch my long content like this, except for the one time I talked about him and it ruined.
And you made him quit.
Something for me. And I made him quit Fridays and Saturdays. It was really bad. I feel bad about that. But I don't want them to hear what I'm about to say. When we have YouTube University, we learn, okay, it's possible. There are different asset classes. This is what cash flow is. This is what yield is. This is how I hunt for a good deal. These are the different investing strategies. These are all of the things that we can put together to have this formula to have the best likelihood of success, right? All of those elements come together. They're all important. But Beth, you're financially free. And you just said, basically, if it is going to make good cash flow, I buy it. Instead of, I have a spreadsheet that will tell me exactly what down payment versus what interest rate compared to what area average rents is going to get me the better yield on these properties that I'm looking at. So I know which one to chase, which is what most investors nowadays do, because there is information on YouTube to say, here's how to pursue the most optimum, best deal of the ones that you can find. Instead of, let me look for a deal that's going to make money and then buy it. And then slowly get better at finding better and better deals and seeing the value adds and all of those things over time. I'm not saying either one of those ways is right. I'm saying it's possible to reach financial freedom without optimizing every single aspect of every purchase. I think I articulated that okay without being insulting to people. As long as Matt doesn't hear me say that.
Here's one thing I can say is I've never had a spreadsheet. And that's one of the things I was gonna talk to Michael Zuber about, but he's traveling now, good for him, or gonna be. But I'm feeling now that my portfolio is great, but it really would be nice at some point. I'm starting to do the countdown to actual retirement. You know, I'm not going to retire all the way, but I'm going to retire maybe 80% in about 7 years when my oldest graduates. And I'm thinking, I have my equity is through the roof. And I could just sell all that and just like not have to deal with anything and live the rest of my life or whatever. I could do that, but I don't want to. I love it too much. I can't just sell it all. But and the cash flow is enough that it doesn't support my business. So if I'm going to still be in business, I still have to work to generate the business income, you know, because I'm self-employed and I have a big business that needs to be fed, right? There's going to come a time where I can step away from that more and more, and it will still run where I don't have to be as actively involved. I can just check in, and that's what I'm going to work for eventually. But the cash flow doesn't support the business too, you know, because businesses are a bigger thing, you know, but my personal life, yeah, totally does. So, but the cash flow versus the equity is so crazy out of whack. If I was going to retire, I got to do something about that. And that's where I'm like, I'm really, really good at building equity. That's like one of my superpowers. Like, oh man, I got equity. Let me tell you about equity. But the thing is, and you can turn that into cash if you want to, but I would like to figure out like, how do I convert this into more? Maybe I'll have to talk to you guys or something. I need to convert this into some more cash flow at some point. Maybe not today, but at some point I'm going to want to get more cash flow out of this, you know, because the return on equity or whatever stinks, you know, but that's how it is in this area when you're dealing with extremely high priced properties where the rents are way out of whack with the values of the property. That's the upside is there's tons of opportunity to add value and grow. If I just sit here and do nothing, it tends to double every 5 to 10 years. And even through the 2008, I did the whole spreadsheet from when I purchased back in the 90s, like every 5 to 7 years, sometimes 10 years on the long end, it doubles. And it's not always going to be a straight line. It's going to do some up and down, but it does. And you can just sit there and wait. It's the power of time and the beauty of it. But at some point, you know, yeah, I'm gonna have to crank up that cash flow. So I need to figure out how do you do that. Maybe you go to another market. I looked at all these things, you know. I remember I did kind of what I did a road trip around the West at one point. I was like, maybe I'll look at Idaho. Maybe I'll look at Montana. I'm like, oh, it's just as bad there, you know. Like I can go to Ellensburg, which is closer to here, like get the same kind of deals. I don't have to drive to Montana, you know. Mm-hmm. So I haven't gone as far as Indiana yet, but maybe that's what it's going to take is going to the Midwest or something. But anyway, that's my quandary. It's like, what do you do at some point? You're going to have to even David Green talks about like you can convert this equity into cash flow later when you need it. Like, yeah, you can, but it's like, how does one actually go about doing that? I know in a basic way, like how you do it, you 1031 into different types of properties, but like,
so it sounds like you get the concept of cash on cash return. This is what I've invested. This is what I'm making as my yield. And it sounds like you understand cash on equity return, right? So if you had the money and you took it out and you put it to work, like you sold everything and put all that money to work, what would be your cash flow there? And so I've looked at doing that on a version of not getting more cash flow as much as having less property. I thought if I sold my paid off one, which would give me enough money to pay off 2 mortgages on my small multifamily, I would actually increase my cash flow on accident, but have one less property to deal with, right? So I'm like even lazier than lazy way of doing this.
Maybe that's what it is. My dad, that's how he's retired. And when I talked to Thatch Wynn at one point, that's what his advice to me was: pay off your mortgages. Like, wow, that's not the advice I was expecting to hear. But like, really, that's millions of dollars. You really want me to just save up millions of dollars to pay down this low interest debt? Like, what?
Well, not save up and pay it off. It's sell one to take the equity to pay off the debt. Right. So, but it's not the best option, but there's a chronology to our investing. And that's what most people forget. We're in growth mode. We're always thinking best use of capital. Like Matt says, Buck, what am I going to do with my money to get the best use, best return? Well, that's different than stabilization to have a good retirement. And then there's one last thing that you might consider, because you have access to the MLS and you have your experience on knowing what rents are. Mason County and Kitsap County is being flooded with remote workers. So home values aren't going up because they can't buy. They're concerned that within a year, their employer might call them back to the office. But since they only have to go to the office once or twice a week, rents have gone up 20, 30% there. So maybe before you start looking at Indiana or even Idaho, look a little bit more west in Washington, take that circle out from the cities and go out a little bit that way. And you might find places to put your money to work there where a 1031 into 2 or 3 small multifamily property to a better return on equity.
Yeah, and that's interesting that going west, because I've always just wanted to just like go east. But you're right. There's probably are some opportunities out there, Mason County, and I haven't even looked. And there are some, like you can find like what you found. There's multifamilies out there that are attainable. In my area, you almost can't find them in East King County, and if you do, they're at like a 2 cap or something. It's like so ridiculous. Like only a cash buyer who just wants to park money in real estate. Like that's the only way I can see that even making sense for anybody.
And the other thing to consider is Kitsap, Mason, and Thurston kind of align politically. And I have a friend who went through a 14-day eviction in Thurston County.
Really?
So when you think King County, how would an eviction be? Thurston County, from here's your 3-day pay or quit, 10 days, sheriff at the door, 14 days.
Amazing.
So you might have a little easier time being a landlord if you look that way too. It's just something else.
Yeah, good tip. I like it out there too. It's nice. So.
And I'm relying on you, Mike. Any other questions popping up?
Yeah, more questions did come through. We have a couple of more. This is an interesting one right here. And this was from, hold on, what's the name? Buzz. So BuzzTune says this one. He says, when you're networking, is there any icebreakers you like to use in initial conversations?
I'll let Beth start with that one. More of a networker than I am.
I usually don't say anything about real estate when I'm just meeting somebody at these events at first. I just relate to people as friends first. I just come out, I'm like, hey, I don't know. Introduce myself, chat a little bit. I think if you align with somebody just as like, hey, how are you? What's going on kind of thing, instead of coming at them like, I want to learn what you're doing kind of thing, like maybe save that for a little bit later. So I would just kind of just make some friendly chit chat. If there's a speaker or something, maybe ask how they, how long you been following so-and-so, or, or you could say, I go to a lot of real estate agent events and stuff too. And I might just talk about like business or something, but I don't have any particular opening line, but.
My opening line is howdy, because it trips everybody up and nobody expects it. It's literally why my shirt says, you had me at howdy.
And you've been to Buc-ee's. I see that too.
I've been to Buc-ee's, right? Yeah, exactly. I had Chesla with me, and she had never been to a Buc-ee's. I was like, you have not seen the Walmart put together as a truck stop? So she had that.
Upon that, just out of the blue, when I went to Texas, and I was like, what the hell is this? I posted a picture of like, I've never seen a gas station with like 200 pumps, like everything's bigger in Texas. What is this place?
Well, that's
People like,
Buc-ee's.
oh, you never been to Buc-ee's? Go on in there. You won't believe it. It's mind blowing.
All
But
right.
anyway, yeah, sorry. Howdy.
Howdy. And so the last thing about Buc-ee's is they have a beef jerky bar. How can you not like that? So
Wow.
the opening line, whenever it comes to networking, and this is what matters to me. And I got this from doing interviews for the last decade, being the president of a truck driving school, doing interviews, right? If you talk, people can judge your intellect. But if you listen, people think you're the smartest person in the room. So my goal when meeting somebody is to ask a question that gets them talking so I don't have to. Because they're going to think I'm smarter if I shut up. If I talk, they're going to be able to judge my level of intellect, and I know what it is. So I want to ask open questions. I don't ask something that gets a yes or a no answer. Ask something like, what's your favorite thing about living around here? If that's where they live. That's not a this thing or that thing. It's going to be a story. Get them talking. That's my thing when it comes to networking. I want to ask questions that sparks the conversation to get the other person talking. It is never, let me share something with you that could really help you. Let me share something with you, right? I don't want to, like you see on YouTube, I'm here to kind of give information. That is not me in person. In person, it is, here's a question, and then I'm going to sit back, give you as much time to talk as possible. And then same thing from interviewing, use silence as a tool. People don't like silence. They want to fill it. Ask a question, be quiet. They'll start talking. That's my networking trick, tool, whatever you want to call it. Mike?
People love to talk about themselves too. So if you do ask people questions about themselves, they'll be like, wow, Dion was the coolest guy ever. And then I've had a friend once where, you know, I have to remind myself, like, I got to remember to ask him more questions because he's always asking me questions about things. And I'm just talking and talking and talking. I'm like, wait a second, I'm doing way too much of the talking here. So I remember, like, I got to remember to, like, get in there and ask questions about him because I want to know what's going on with him too. He doesn't want to hear me talking the whole time. So, but then I realized, like, oh, that's probably why one of the reasons why he's so good at what he does is he's a very good question asker and people get talking. And that's just a great way to relate to people.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike, working in law enforcement, what's your icebreaker?
Do you have any idea how fast you're going? Just kidding. Just kidding. No, but for me, Dion has a couple of special talents. Dion says that his two superpowers are, number one, he can fall asleep anywhere, no matter what. And number two, I don't know if he wants me to share, but do you want me to share it? Number two? Nope, I won't share number two. I figure that's why I asked.
Nope.
Here's the interesting thing.
Thank you.
I can tell probably, I could darn near write a biography on Dion, on Zuber, on the Lumberjack. I know an awful lot about Beth, Cody, and Christian. All these people, I know their personal stories. I know their backgrounds. I know their financial standing. I know how they got their rentals. I mean, I could tell you darn near everything. I could do a Dion show for him if I shaved my head and looked a little more handsome. And the way that I got to being like that is because I have a superpower. I can make friends with anybody. And the way that I do it is kind of what you guys were getting there right at the end, is all I do is ask them questions about them. I don't talk about myself. I don't talk about my accomplishments. Now, if I get asked a direct question, I'll answer, but I will, as quickly as I possibly can, change the conversation back around to them. And it's not a manipulation tactic, except for when I'm on a first date, then it's absolutely a manipulation tactic. But when I'm trying to network with people, it just comes down to people, like Beth said, people love to talk about themselves. So you ask them what they're doing, how long that they've been investing, what their plans are, where they're looking to invest, what that market's like, what type of research have they done. And even if they say things that you know are wrong because they might be new or something like that, you keep asking thoughtful questions about what they're interested in or their personal life or what their hobbies or whatever it might be. You let them talk, and people love to talk about themselves. So they will naturally come away from that having had a positive experience. And then even better, if you don't only ask them what they're doing, ask them for their advice. Because the one thing people love to do more is brag about themselves, is give advice. My son hands me a banana for some reason. Thanks, but I'm talking. Get out of here, you little bum.
I thought you were hungry.
I appreciate that, buddy. You ask them for their advice, because people want to be seen as intelligent. They want to be seen as knowing something. They want to contribute. And then if you ask for their advice and try to incorporate that into your life and then come back and report back to them later, hey, I took what you said and I ran with it, or I tried what you said, or could you give me a little more advice, or what do you think I could do differently? Dude, people will become so invested in your success. You'll get so many thousands of hours of free mentorship that you end up on their live streams routinely as a guest without having to pay the $500 an hour coaching calls. You just manipulate your way right into it.
And then that person says, hey, why don't I just sell or finance you my whole portfolio in 20 years?
Pretty easy. It's pretty easy.
Superpower.
I would say, again, just coattailing right on that, I would just say, whenever I go into any kind of event, I set my intention to have for contribution. Like, I'm going to contribute something positive to this event. I'm going to contribute positive energy. I'm going to help somebody today. I'm going to improve somebody's knowledge or help them have a better day, encourage someone. Whatever your intention is, go walking through that door, set that ahead of time. And that helps how the whole event goes, really. If you just know, I'm just here just to contribute to this event and hopefully bring some positive energy and some positive information to people that can benefit from it, and to be receptive to receive that in return. And that will set the tone. If you go in there with other things in your mind, that can just kind of muddy the waters a bit. So it'll help you be more confident if you just set that intention going into that event.
Mike, next question.
Let me pull it back up. This was from the IYAAYAS. And they ask, because you self-manage your properties, how do you handle emergency repairs when you're on vacation? And then they said excellent content as well.
Thank you for that. It's been over 5 years since I've had to go to a property. And I'm talking about when I lived in the fourplex. I didn't have to go to unit 1, 3, 4, whatever, right? Handyman is going to do that. Plumber's going to do that. Electrician's going to do that. When we start out, a lot of us think, I'm going to save money and do things myself. When I started out, I did go and work next to a handyman. I wanted to know, how long does a full deck repair, like, it wasn't a replace, it was repair all the rotten boards and make sure that the pilings weren't done right. I didn't save any money. I paid him exactly what he would have gotten if he'd done it by himself, but I worked there, kind of learned the scope of the work to know what to be charged. Didn't have to. So while I'm here, it's a text or an email, or has it ever happened? I got a phone call? No, not traveling. But it's exactly the same when I'm at home. I'm not going to go and handle the issue. I can. I've chosen a couple of times to, I have a nephew who rents for me, and there was some light in the kitchen or something. And I thought, well, if I go there, I get to see my nephew. That's totally different than I'm in Texas. How do I handle this problem? Month and a half in Portugal. I'm heading to Thailand for a few months. It's exactly like I'm in Washington, no different. I think it's entirely possible to manage a portfolio long distance, but I think there's a chronology to how you set it up. I wouldn't want to buy 3 rentals in Gary, Indiana, and then have to get the systems in place and self-manage, right? I'd have a property manager like Mike does. But living in Washington, having somewhere between 5 and 10 handyman at any point in time that I can call, the Thumbtack app, the laundry list of numbers of 24-hour a day, 7-day a week plumbers, 7-day a week electricians that I would call for an issue. And here's the cheat code. Do you know how many investors I'm friends with? I could call Mike. I guarantee Mike would say, yeah, I'm at a SWAT call, so it'll be in 5 hours. But I could go, hey, can you go sign this lease with a tenant, have them sign in front of you or something? Mike could call me. Your list of investor friends is your list of people who might help you with things that you can help with things, but they're also your list of which handyman do you recommend? And I have an emergency. Do you have one available now that can do this? So that's how I handle it when I'm traveling. So let's take the question to Beth. How many times have you physically had to be the one to go to your property to solve an issue? Not that you wanted to and could, but you had to be the one to go do it.
Never. I never do it. My very first rental, I remember I was doing some of that stuff, but that's not my strong suit. I'm not good at that stuff. I don't know how to do it. What I am really great at is building great relationships with people who do that stuff, and people that I talk to constantly that become friends of mine. And so because I'm a real estate agent too, I have a huge network of people. Like, things come up constantly from my real estate business that need to be dealt with immediately, big and little. And I've got people that I can call for all of these things. And they're people that I have strong ongoing relationships with, where I treat them like gold. And some of them have been able to grow their business by the number of referrals that I give them. So they're going to really treat me really well. And I make sure I treat them really well. I pay them fast. I don't give them any crap. I do well for them. They do well for me. But I've got people where it's like, oh, we got a rodent problem. Who am I going to call? I'm calling this person, and my relationship with them has value, and their relationship with me has value. And so when you have that, that helps a lot. I had some things happen when I was I remember there was a gas leak at one of my houses when I was in Arizona, and I was like, what? And it was during a storm, and so like PSE went up there, and I guess they just like opened up all the doors and then just left it open to the elements. I'm like, excuse me, I was in Arizona. Who do I call to deal with this? And my husband's contractor, and that helps a lot, but trust me. But he wasn't there either, and so I have people that we could call. We've got a lot of people that we could call at any time who will run up there and do that. But it's like, whether it's your plumber, your electrician, your handyman, your landscaper, your cleaners, and they're all people that I have. That is one of my biggest strengths, is that I have fantastic networking abilities and relationships with people who can provide services, and I provide services for them too. It's very much a reciprocal relationship. But I remember years ago on my very first rental, I was in there cleaning. It was some tenant turnover, and I was in there cleaning their disgusting bathroom. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And I'm like, I'm literally never going to do this ever again in my life. And I haven't ever since. But it's like, I don't, my bathroom doesn't look like this, and I'm not scrubbing, why am I scrubbing this? It's disgusting. I'm just like, never doing it again. So now it's just like, great. I call the cleaners. I just had to do a tenant turnover, and so I have my cleaner I just automatically plan on they're coming in and they're going to do a full move out clean. And there's going to be no question from the new tenant about it wasn't clean enough or whatever. Like, it's just, you just work it into your plan. So, but you got to have your if there is if there is an emergency, it's usually a handyman or a plumber issue, sometimes electrical, but more likely plumbing than anything else. Find those people and then give them referrals, and make sure that they know. I always tell people when I give a referral, if I'm not personally making it, I say, be sure and tell them Beth Traverso sent you. And they know that. And so now sometimes they get these calls for things. Oh, well, we can fit you. We're normally booked out 2 weeks, but because you're from Beth Traverso, we'll see if we can fit you in after hours on Tuesday instead of 2 weeks from Tuesday. And so that helps build the relationship, just being able to make those connections where people will do extra for you because you're so good to them. But yeah, roofer, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, we had a hot tub emergency at the cabin. Like, somebody else took care of it. Like, there's no need. And it really is true, Dion. Like, if I'm never going there, then I could really be anywhere doing these things too. But you have to have boots on the ground, people that will be able to run out and handle things for you. And I've got, through my sales team and my investing team, there's probably a good dozen people that I could call for any kind of number of things. But like, somebody needs this thing right now. Can you go do it? Like, one of those people is going to be available right now and be happy to go do it. So, but you have to work on building those relationships. And that's one of the most important parts of investing, is building those strong relationships. And you got to treat them really well. If you're a jerk to people, or you don't want to pay them, you want to nickel dime. So I find people that provide good value for what they do, and I pay them quickly what they are charging, because I know they're not, if it's somebody who's not providing the value and they're, overcharging, well, then they won't have that relationship with me. But if they're people that I know that they're really good and they're going to run out there and do that thing, like if somebody's like, oh my God, we got a sewer back up at XYZ Main Street, can you go out there right now? If you were a jerk to them and you didn't want to pay them and you wanted to pay them late, nickel dime them, breathe down their neck and micromanage, are they going to run out there and do that for you? No. So you got
So
to
there
find
are some people
people,
thinking,
cultivate that relationship. Yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There are some people thinking, well, I don't have a list of people to call, right? I got really good at building a list because I was a single parent and I would watch other people's kids so that I could have people to call to watch my kids if I needed. So it's the same way in business. If you want to build a list of people that you can call when you have a problem, you need to be the kind of person people can call when they have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you do that, the bigger your list gets. I also hope that Mike learns from Beth on not cleaning a toilet, because when you start short-term rentaling right next door and you live at the duplex and you think, I could save a cleaning fee because I could go over there and do it myself, get the list of cleaners ready. Be happy that they make money. You'll be more likely to add more short-term rentals to your portfolio if you're not the one doing that.
Agreed. Don't worry. I don't plan on cleaning for very much longer. Been doing it for 1 month. I'm going to transition away once I know for sure that the unit can sustain itself. My plan is not to be, and cleaning the toilets isn't bad. It's freaking making the beds. I hate making the beds. It's annoying. All the laundry, pain in the neck. Anyways, we do have another question, but I have, I'm gonna let the audience decide. So the topic of your video was, do you have an impact? And I thought of what you've done that was super impactful for me. But the truth is, I can't say it in front of Dion. So the only way I'm going to say what it is that Dion had such a huge impact on me for is if he actually removes himself, like mutes the video, gets off the camera, promises not to watch this back later. But I want the audience to decide whether or not they want to hear it. No, not yet, Dion. You're going to answer a question first. The audience has to at least say like, you better come back, bum. Yeah, the audience has to, I need at least 10 comments that say they want to hear what it is for me, because this is not it's not a typical answer, so it may not even be relevant. But if enough people say they want to hear it, I'll share. But we have another question. This is from Average Millennial Investor. I believe it's a he. He says that he's looking to buy his first rental. Do I look for cash flow or appreciation in this high rate market? And when is the time to do it? And I'm going to pause and go make my son macaroni. I'll be right back.
Would you like to go first, Beth, or would you like to go second? I'll let you choose.
Oh, I'll let you go first. So you're the better one to answer this.
Okay. It's a great question. I think that question comes up often, especially when you watch content creators who talk about the power of appreciation. True wealth comes from appreciation. Are you chasing wealth 20 years from now? Or do you want to protect your assets? I've never yet touched appreciation. No sale for 1031, no sale for money, no cash out refinance, no home equity line of credit, nothing that has touched that equity that Beth wants to put to work to get a better return on her equity. But I never have to work again because of cash flow. And don't underestimate the power of a little cash flow. Couple $100. You're never going to get $1,000 a month if you don't get that first couple $100 a month. That comes after a couple of years. Most of my deals cash flowed around $400 a unit, and that's not the metric that I use to judge them. I use the yield metric. So how much did I invest to acquire the property? Cost to acquire, down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, that amount of money. And then my annual profit, right? So I'm figuring out my cash on cash return. What is that percentage? So that I know how much money I need to invest to get the cash flow that I need. You're going to hear a lot of investors who have been investing for 5, 10, or 15 or more years who say, I am making an appreciation play, or I've got a bunch of appreciation to put to work. Most times they didn't invest for that appreciation. They have it. Or they have a huge portfolio that has a lot of cash flow, and they can take what seems to them like a little bit of money, but might be more than another person will ever see, let's say $100,000, and they throw it at a property for appreciation. If it makes a bunch of appreciation, they're very happy. If they lose every penny, They don't care because it's a very small part of a big portfolio. So that seasoned investor with a bigger portfolio and good cash flow can make those appreciation plays. The new investor starting out, if you don't invest for cash flow, you are adding decades to your investing. And the income snowball happens because of cash flow. When you have more than one source of income that can increase every year over a few years, by the third, fourth, or fifth year, it starts to be an amount of money that is a little actually hard to figure out what to do with. That comes from cash flow. So we're Millennium Mike here, Lumberjack Landlord, Zuber, myself. We're probably going to be making some videos on, and I'll be completely transparent. That's my goal here always. I don't work for BiggerPockets, but I'm a teaching assistant for their rookie boot camps. So when it comes to BiggerPockets saying, let's not worry about cash flow, you should go for appreciation from syndications, from larger investments, from more time in the market. You should learn a skill that makes more money. When you hear those things, remember that's on the BiggerPockets podcast. They also have a rookie podcast that is talking specifically to people that have done less than 10 deals. So those people starting out in investing, where you focus on cash flow, where you focus on yield. What is the best return on my investment? Later, and it's just like the LLCs. If you start with an LLC, you're putting barriers in front of your place. If you start hoping, don't get caught living on hopium, hoping for appreciation because you can't guarantee it. Just because properties went up for the last decade doesn't mean they're going to go up for the next decade. There were people who made appreciation plays in 2007. They weren't around with real estate in 2010. There were people who purchased for cash flow in 2007 who increased their cash flow in 2010 because when millions of people went through foreclosures, they became renters, which increased demand on a limited supply. So rents went up after that 2008 housing crash. So my advice for the new investor, and the less a person makes declarative statements, the less apt they are to look foolish in retrospect. That's my Tarantino quote. I don't want to say never, but I would say almost never invest for appreciation when you're starting out. At a point of investing for 20 years, Michael Zuber took, it was either 1 or 5% of his net worth and threw it at crypto. He just bought coins. If it makes, it was 1%, yeah. If it makes money, sweet. If he loses it all, he'll probably laugh and not actually care. Should a new investor throw all of their money at crypto without being educated on the asset class? Because Mike didn't take the 6 months or a couple of years to learn how crypto works and figure out which coins to predict with, right? Or gamble on. He just threw the money at it. A small amount of a portfolio used on an appreciation play is going to be something that an investor talks about like a huge win. They're going to say, I bought this trailer park and it doesn't cash flow very much, but it's tripled in value in the last 4 years. So look how much money I've made. Sounds like a genius. The odds of that happening on the new investor is very small. The odds that that trailer park could have lost all of the money that that person invested and it not mattered were pretty big. That's why they were making that investment. If you have anything to add, Beth, feel free.
No, I love what you said, Dion. It's true. And it's especially for new investors. Nothing can sink an investment career, it seems like, faster than buying something that doesn't cash flow. Maybe that needs a lot of repairs that you don't have money for, etc. Like that can sink you. Cash flow is the thing that's going to keep you in the game, you know. And as somebody who did invest through 8, 9, 10, one thing I can say is I didn't lose any properties. I didn't have a whole lot, but I think we had maybe 4 rentals or something at that time. Which ain't bad, but didn't lose any of them. And that was because they all cash flowed. I couldn't sell them because they were upside down, but at least I was able to keep paying the mortgage. There was renters in there paying the mortgage. So there was no reason to lose them. And so you just ride it out, because it only matters if you're underwater, if you have to sell when it's underwater. Otherwise, you just ride it out. I bought my house in 2007. It was the absolute worst time you could have bought a house. And I was underwater for years. And it was kind of like, man, this stinks, just the psychological weight of that. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because I'm still here, sitting here right now, all these years later. and the value is up, and same thing. It doesn't really matter that the value is way up unless I'm going to sell it. So the appreciation or lack of is only matters if you're buying or selling. But like in the meantime, you have to hold the asset and preserve the asset. And the fact that I had cash flowing assets when it hit the fan, it's what saved me, that. And I was able to sell off a couple of those couple of properties, at the right time. Thank God. I was going to use that to pay down our house that we bought with toxic debt and get out of that toxic debt. I figured, why not? I thought, I didn't realize it was all going to blow up at the same time, the very worst time. So anyway, I learned some things from that, right? And one of them being like, you got to make sure that your bases are covered and that you're safe. If you get too risky, once, if you want to buy crypto later, I did some of that too. Like I bought a certain amount that, I bought it immediately at like, now it's worth like half what it was. Oh, well, it was just extra. It's not like it's going to hurt me in any way, but, you have to have the cash flow to keep you safe. And this is coming from somebody that from my previous stories, I'm a big fan of appreciation, because at some point I can turn that into some sort of cash flow, and I will at some point. But or sell a couple things and pay everything off and just coast, and appreciation will allow me to do that. But at the same time, I still don't, every single property I have cash flows, every single one, even now in this market, and I've had somebody came to me recently the other day who was looking at buying a duplex in an area where it was crazy negative cash flow. And like, I know it was an amazing area, but like, why would you do that? I somebody grabbed by the collar, like, why would you do that? This is an investment for you. It's one thing if you're going to live in it, maybe you could make something work, but to immediately buy into something that's just going to cost like thousands of dollars of negative cash flow every month, it's like, that's reckless. I don't care who you are. If you want to pay cash for something, fine, but like, then at least like you gotta keep your core protected. And you don't want to be so scared that you never make any moves, but what I've learned is just, and this last year has been another wonky one for people in real estate sales like me, but it's like, thank God my core is protected. And then I'm watching things carefully to make sure from the lessons past that these things don't sink me like they used to have the potential to sink, that is a very, feeling like your base is not secure or like your home is not secure. That's a very stressful place to be. And as long as you have cash flow, you're not going to find yourself in that spot, and it will bail you out. So yeah, that's my take on it. I'm a big fan of appreciation, but the cash flow needs to be there. Like, that is the base that you build from.
So before we go, if there's another question to that, Mike, there's one last thing on cash flow. And this is how I've used this. This is an analogy I've used when I've met somebody. Usually they're younger and they're kind of looking at real estate. They haven't even like started to save yet or worked on credit score. So they're a ways away from even picking the market and the strategy. Imagine if you could give away a cell phone, and every time you gave away the cell phone, the company would charge you $1. So you can get an iPhone 15 and give it away for $1. How many would you give away? Your friends, your family? You'd probably find 200 or 300 people. I mean, you can actually give away a cell phone for $1. It's only going to cost you $1. You'd give away a couple hundred. What if every time you gave away a cell phone, this company will give you as many as you want. You can give them away. But every time you give one away, they'll give you just $1. So only $1. There's 8 billion people on the planet. I would reach out to 8 billion people and ask how many they want. You see the difference of a dollar going in or a dollar going out? The scope of I'd give away a couple hundred versus billions. I focus on cash flow because, and this sounds kind of arrogant to say, I feel like I've won at life being able to retire early and not having to work ever again. And none of that's happened because of depreciation. My kids will inherit millions. Don't tell them. I tell them when I'm 65, I'm going to marry an 18-year-old and they're going to get everything. But that's where the appreciation will probably benefit. That's not going to impact me at all. Were there any other questions coming up, Mike?
Just a bunch of people now identifying as 18-year-olds in the chat for whatever reason. I don't know.
Weird. So weird.
Just kidding. Yeah, this one's actually a good one. And it's just a reminder that even though you've talked on these topics many times before, there's always new people joining who have questions that may have been answered before, but are important to cover again. So Travel Mang with a second question says, how do you tax write off revenue from a cash flowing property? So I assume he means how do you write off your income so you don't pay taxes in it for a cash flowing property?
I'll give a short answer, and then Beth, you can talk on this, and then if we need to, I can give more. Last year, 2022, $204,000 in profit. I have a video from about a week ago called The Truth About Cash Flow. The actual profit after paying principal, interest, taxes, insurance, after setting aside over $3,000 a month for future repairs and maintenance, after all expenses, that's what was left. That's how much rental income tax I owed. Because real estate has the added benefit of not only write-offs on your expenses, but write-offs based on depreciation. We get to say, even though our buildings and our properties have gone up in value, we get to tell the government, using their own rules, my buildings are a year older. I'm going to take 1/27th and a half of the value and of all of the buildings on all of my properties and write that off against my rental income. Over a decade, I've still never paid a penny in rental income tax. Now, at some point, I will. I can't wait to make, and this is a unprofessional term, cover your kids' ears, such a metric crap ton of money that there is some left over that has to go to the government because we need taxes to pay for Mike's wages. Beth.
Thank you.
How do you write off your rental?
Yeah, well, that's the magic of depreciation. And one thing that I have, it's an extra ace in the hole. I don't know if you have it or not, Dion, but I'm a real estate professional for the tax designation. You have to, there's a pretty decently high bar to meet to get that, but I meet it, thank goodness. So that means I get to write off some of my active income gets to be offset by the passive too. So again, like talk to a CPA and get the lowdown on that. But it's a beautiful thing. I've never paid any tax on any rental income. I've paid tax on my active income from my sales business. I get a lot of write-offs on that too. So it helps. I mean, like I don't have to pay nearly as much tax as somebody else would have to from a W-2, for example. But it's the depreciation for sure. Depreciation and then the real estate professional status, if you can have that. And then, then there's a whole tax segregation thing too, if you wanted to do, or cost segregation, sorry, if you wanted to accelerate that depreciation, which that's a kind of a meaty topic, probably more than we go into here. But some people can get big lump, you can front load that appreciation sometimes into one tax year to a certain extent. Whether it makes sense to do that or not, you gotta talk to CPA. If you front load it now, it means you don't get it later. But it can really cut down your tax bill.
The Cliff Notes version on some of the things that Beth just touched on there. If you're a real estate professional, meaning you work in real estate more than 751 hours a year, and you work in real estate more than you do in your W-2, your write-offs from real estate, your depreciation can be used against your W-2 income. I didn't qualify for that because I work less than 2 hours a month. It doesn't quite hit the 751 hours a year. And last year I was working up until July, about 60 hours a week. So I didn't hit on either metric. Lumberjack landlord doesn't hit on that metric, but his wife. So if you have a spouse who works in your real estate and doesn't have a W-2, does qualify, then rental income can be used against both of your W-2 income. So they did a cost segregation study and got a 6-figure check back from the IRS. Millennial Mike recently learned that doing a short-term rental has a loophole that might be able to use the short-term rental losses, which include depreciation, against W-2. Definitely whenever it comes to any tax questions, we can give you the, I don't want to know anything that I just said. I want to hire a pro who knows that. Like, I don't want to know how to put a roof on. I want to hire a pro to do that. So you're going to hire a tax pro. What we need to know as investors is Congress is full of people who own real estate who keep making laws that benefit people who own real estate. So as long as we have Congress, you should own real estate.
Yeah. And as soon as when I bought my first rental property was when I hired my first like actual CPA. It
Me
gets
too.
way more complicated and I probably would have done it wrong and cost myself a lot of money. So that's when I brought a professional in to help with that.
You can comment on any of these too, Mike, or you can go to the next question.
Oh, yeah. Well, the original question was, do you buy for cash flow or appreciation? I got a video that I'm dropping. It was when we had that live stream the other day about cash flow. I came up with a list of 10 tactics and strategies that I'm using to still get cash flowing rental properties in 2023 and moving into 2024. So on Friday, I'm dropping a video on those 10 strategies that you can use to still find cash flow, because that's one of the concerns I have, as you guys mentioned earlier, is that BiggerPockets is trending further and further away from cash flow. I kind of expose them and talk about them in the video and show a bunch of their little clips and things like that they're doing. I also have a David Green exposed video coming out. In fact, I might just do the whole BiggerPockets cadre and just roast them all, because why not? But they're moving away from the message that they used to share to this new message, which seems a little concerning for me, because I don't understand why you would ever tell anybody to not buy for positive cash flow. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know any investors that I'm actually personal friends with who do it. And I know investors with 1, 2 units all the way up to hundreds of units. So cash flow is very much important. But yes, we do have more questions. So this one is from Buddy 3S. He says, question, pay cash for a property or take out a loan. A cash purchase eliminates the ability to purchase more until I refinance.
For me, it depends on where you're at in your growth phase. If you are trying to grow your portfolio, it almost never makes sense to pay all cash. I'll say almost never. Once you're in stabilization phase and you're financially free and maybe retired and you want to deploy your funds because they've got to go somewhere, maybe. The power of leverage is one of the things that makes real estate so much better than any other asset class. If I could get a guaranteed 10% return on a savings account with my money in the bank with no risk, or a 5% cash on cash return with real estate, logical people would say, well, 10% sounds like more. But a 5% cash on cash return in real estate, or historically properties appreciate 5% a year. In the last couple of years, you got 20, 30% is not normal. And it might not appreciate either. But 5% on 4 times what I invest, plus the 5% cash on cash, is at a minimum a 25% return versus the 10% on the guaranteed return in the savings account, which is then taxed, versus 25%, which is not taxed, plus principal pay down and all of the other benefits that come from real estate. So all cash versus leverage, there's a video on my channel. It was back when I used to do videos that don't work for YouTube because too many people listen. And I played leverage, which was a pirate, and all cash, which was a monster that actually has a machine gun in the video. And I talk about the power of leverage, but it's a two-edged sword. One of the things that happened in 2007 is a lot of people were 105% levered. I was over that because I had refinanced out money to give my ex her portion of the equity before I found out about all of the debt. But I don't want to be 105% levered. My goal while growing my portfolio was to be around 70% levered. So while I did put 5% down on one duplex, every purchase since then has been at least 20 or 25% down. So yes, I'm going to use a mortgage, but I don't want to be 100% levered. I think there are some people right now who might get into a little trouble with the 5% down buying a triplex or a fourplex. Not the people who watch this kind of content and understand what yield is and how to calculate cash flow, but the people who don't have hardly any information. They just know house hacking is a thing. I could buy a small multifamily and 5% down, I can afford that. And then they might buy an alligator, which is not what I recommend. Beth, all cash versus leverage.
I have just always been a fan of the power of leverage. That was one of the things when I was first learning about real estate investing way back in the caveman days, way before YouTube and all of that, when it was explained to me in a seminar, like how you can use leverage and then looking at how you can take that 10% down or whatever, and what you're getting from that is so exponential. I learned it then, and I was bit by that bug, and I've not been afraid of debt because I see it as the tool that it is, and I always have reserves too. But um, I partly because I'm in a market where it's very difficult to pay cash. It's not something I typically would do. Although I have purchased cash, but it's been as from the proceeds of a 1031, like basically moving equity around and buying multiple properties. I might buy one cash and then, but you have to roll the debt into another property with the 1031 to get the full tax write off or exchange. So, that said, I mean, maybe it depends on where you are, but and where you are in your journey is where you are geographically. But I like to put when I'm purchasing a new property and I'm doing it through traditional financing, I tend to do 25% down because I don't like to be after those 2008, 9, 10 days where they just be like, hey, you can borrow 110% on your rental property, or it was crazy. And you can pay less than the interest even only every month. And so you're every month you owe more than you did the month before. And oh, eventually it's all going to catch up to you, but don't worry, you can always refinance later. That was what everybody was saying. You can always refinance. And then all of a sudden you couldn't refinance. And then boom, that's when everybody started losing their properties back to the bank, So it's like, don't do that. At this point in my career, I'm levered about maybe 40% loan to value across everything if you bundle it all together. But I have some seller finance ones where I've financed almost the entire thing. But I also purchase a little bit under market, but I'm on the more conservative side of the value. So really it's got a little more in there. But I always make sure the terms are sustainable, that I'm going to be able to ride it out long term. So, and again, like I have some paid off properties where if I had to be, like, oh, it's emergency, we got to pull that ripcord and, something's got to happen here. There's that as a fallback, but so I think, leverage it's a tool. It's a tool that can be dangerous, but it's when used properly, it can be game changing and life changing. So definitely as a beginning investor, I would never purchase. If I had, say, $100,000 and I was a new investor and I wanted to buy real estate, I'd probably try to buy 3 or 4 properties with that rather than one house. That will accelerate your journey exponentially. Is that power to purchase multiple properties and get that cash flow on each one, get the appreciation on them. If you wanted to later sell one and pay it off in 10 years or something, then maybe do that. But then you still would have other, you have multiple assets working for you.
3 other things on leverage. The first is I talked about being around 70% loan to value while growing the portfolio. When I retired last year, my goal is to be around 50%. I'm right with you, Beth. I did the math the other day. I'm at like 42% levered as far as loan to value of the whole portfolio. So I might pull some money out of this last burr when I'm done with it. Maybe, probably not. But the second thing about leverage is it's a form of asset protection. If you get sued, the bank is in first position. So it's one of my 3 forms of asset protection that I recommend since I'm so anti-LLC. And then the third thing about leverage is, let's say you have an insurance claim. I have a paid off property. If I have an insurance claim at my paid off property, I'm dealing with insurance. If I have an insurance claim at my property that has a mortgage, me and that bank's team of lawyers is dealing with my insurance. So there's a lot of benefits to having leverage that aren't just which one has the best mathematical outcome. I think
that's all.
As the last couple of questions come in, we might be wrapping up for the night.
Yeah.
People want to know what was that answer that you're not going to say?
I said 10. I counted 9. It's on the commenters.
Can I vote?
No, you don't count, Beth. You don't count.
Sorry. Somebody else has got to jump in.
Oh, that's on them.
You can't leave that cliffhanger.
I guess until next time.
Somebody's jumping in right now.
To be continued.
Okay.
So you can find Mike here on YouTube, Millennial Mike. You can also find him on Instagram, Millennial Mike, but it's spelled a little different.
Yeah, on Instagram it's Millennial, but just with one N. Somebody else had the name already. Dang it.
Fair enough. And Beth, you can find it BethTraversogroup.com, and any other way, Instagram, Facebook, something like that.
Yeah, I'm on there, and I also do I'm a weekly guest on the One Rental at a Time, just like you
And
guys.
one rental at a time. Yes.
Yeah.
For the month of November, I am taking $100 off of my course on how to reach financial freedom for the lazy person, which you can find at DionTalk.com. Maybe one of my admins will put it in the chat. And then for the month of December, through the entire month of December, unless it falls on like a Christmas, I haven't checked yet. Every Tuesday at the end of the live stream, there will be a Zoom call that all of the course members can jump in, or course Zoom calls every Tuesday throughout the entire month of December. You can also find my free course called The Binder Strategy at DionTalk.com, where it teaches you how to get your tenants to ask you to raise the rent. They actually ask you for a rent increase. In that, I include my spreadsheet that me and my CPA created that tracks my income and expenses with my rentals, and my seller financing letter is there. All of that for free in the Binder Strategy course. You got 12 people now, Mike.
All right, you got to dip out, and I will text you when to end the live stream then.
All right, I'm gonna mute it and wait for your text. So I gotta get my outro really quick here. People should stay and listen to Mike. But until my next live stream or video, thanks for coming to our Dion and Beth and Mike talk.
Perfect. All right. I can't say this to Dion because it's tough to say things like this to his face, but the question was, does he have an impact? Does Dion have an impact? So let me tell you guys a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes, a little bit of the secret sauce behind the One Rental at a Time, Lumberjack, Dion, magic that you guys are all a fan of on YouTube. I work incredibly hard to help all of these guys. I edited every single video for the Lumberjacks course. I edited the entire first event that we did for Michael Zuber's course, edited it for him for free, spent like 50 hours editing that thing. I try my best to give back to these guys in every way I can, but Dion has helped me more than probably anybody that I can think of. And the Lumberjack and Zuber are nothing to sneeze at. These guys have worked very hard, but Dion is just head and shoulders, like, it's amazing. So how has he had an impact on my life? He has insisted that I speak alongside him at every single event that he has been invited to speak at for the last like year and a half. I was not invited. Nobody wanted me to come. Nobody cared. And I'm not trying to make you feel bad for me. Dion went out of his way to insist Cody and Christian invite me to speak, and to insist that Zuber allow me to speak alongside Beth and Dion at his last event and at the next event. I went down and attended some Northwest Action Summit in Portland where Dion was like, you have to come with, you have to speak. He believes in me so much that he spends quite literally probably hundreds of hours at this point helping me make content, film shorts, do everything that he can to prop me up and springboard me to help me be successful. Why? I don't know why. I mean, like, I'd like to think that I'm likable, but he is just a good person who genuinely cares about other people. Even in this live stream, every question that's getting asked, he turns it over to Beth so that Beth can have an opportunity to talk and share her wisdom and experience first. The only thing that I can think of is that he so truly cares about the people that he's trying to help that he doesn't want to sell you a course. He's not trying to get you to buy a book. He doesn't want you to just go get signed up for a boot camp. He isn't just trying to take your money. He gave his binder strategy, the signature Dion freaking content that he got on BiggerPockets for, the binder strategy he made into a free course. What did I learn from Dion? How's he impacted me? Do every single thing you can to help every single person around you, even at your own expense, even if it doesn't make sense, even if strategically it might not be the smartest move. If you go out of your way to help every other person around you, there's no way you can fail, and you will inculcate within those people such a ridiculous level of loyalty that I'd do anything for him. That you guys who are sitting here down in the chat right now, after 2 hours on a Tuesday for the, second year in a row or whatever, are still showing up because it just drives that type of loyalty out of people. And it's sappy. That's why I can't say it when he's listening. I believe him when he says he won't go back and watch it. But while we're singing his praises, Beth, what do you think?
I think that's great. That just touches me so much. But I would say, yeah, so Dion and you, and I think a lot of people in this community it's the very essence of being a go-giver. Just like you contribute without expecting anything in return. And that's the most rewarding way to live, in my opinion. So not looking to be self-serving, but to serve others, and therefore you get the rewards of seeing how you help others, and helping others do better is the reward, and giving is the reward. And Dion's a great example of that, and you are too, Mike. So hats off, and that's why you are getting that. It's because you're giving. So
Well, I appreciate that, but seriously, how has he had an impact? I don't think anybody can truly articulate or put into words properly, but it is inspiring to watch somebody care so much about other people. He is not out for himself. I've met enough YouTubers. I've met some famous YouTubers, and you can tell when some people are real in person, but different behind when the cameras are off or when you're not live anymore. Dude, he is through and through. He's just better in real life because you actually get to hang out with him even more. That's going to be the best part. I promise you guys, when we're all at the event in Vegas, you're going to love it because you're going to get to hang out with him after hours. We're all going to go to Denny's in the middle of the night, hang out a couple of days before. You'll see what I'm talking about. And it's the real deal. So I am a Dion Talk avid subscriber. I know Beth is. I know you guys are. That's all I had to share. I'm going to text them right now to end the live stream because it's just getting too cheesy in here. Thanks for being here, guys. You should subscribe to his channel. Get his course if you don't have it. And hopefully this thing ends soon because, yeah, I don't know. I still says live stream. I don't know when we're going to know
it's still live streaming until it's not, I guess. So
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm going to turn this back on and make sure that we don't leave it like blanked at the end because if we have it with nothing, then I don't want it to mess up his algorithm.